Roommate thought she was sneaky, ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. So this happened my second semester dorming at my college campus. I had met my roommate at orientation and could kind of already tell she was going to be a pain in my ass. And I was right about that. I had planned on moving rooms to be closer to some friends the next semester. But let me go to the story that led to my revenge. On our campus, you had to pay for meals using your student ID, which had a certain amount of money on it each semester. You could also use an app that you put your name and ID info into and it makes it easier to pay. But the name and ID must match for it to work, which will be important later. Any funds from the fall semester would roll over into the spring, but then at the end of spring, it would just expire. Because of this, and because I only ate once or two a day, I had a ton saved up on my card. My roommate, on the other hand, did not. So I offered to pay for some of her meals from time to time in trade of her picking up the food for us, which involved her using my card twice in person and then she would return it. Then, one day, I noticed on my app that my card was being charged even when I was not ordering food. And not just a meal, like a meal for several people. This meant that whoever was ordering, I wonder who, either had to have stolen my ID card, which I had in my pocket when I got the charge, or was impersonating my info in the app, which are both big no-nos on my campus. I was quick to put two and two together and was pretty pissed. I was initially going to confront her on it, but decided to formulate the plan instead. That day, I went and ordered a second ID card for $25 to use for later. As it took a couple of weeks to get the new one, I let her charge several things to my card over a good 2 weeks for her and her friends, and she wasn't very good at hiding it either, as they would come to our dorm and eat. While I just screenshot and sent emails to the support team of the app about the charges, knowing nothing would get done until I contact someone in person, and one day it got even better. As you can buy groceries with the card off campus as well, she decided to pay for alcohol with my card, which doesn't get pinged as an issue on my card due to me being over 21, but she was only 19. Not sure how she got it, but it was just a thing to finally act on my plan. I put on my best sad face on and contacted the head of campus living and head of my dorm about the charges on my account. I dropped some hints that it could be my roommate and mentioned I got a new ID and asked what I should do. I was told to order a new card, and once I got it, to deactivate my current ID and use the new one for purchases now, making my old ID have a balance of 0 and also to ping if someone uses it to buy anything. They also told me they would be visiting my dorm to discuss the issue with my roommate. I accepted that and waited. They sent a confirmation email that they would be visiting, and I just decided to add more fuel to the fire. My roommate was groaning about not having the funds for food in front of me in our dorm. I told her I really couldn't help her as I was running low on funds, and she kind of just laughed it off and left the room to probably go use my old ID. I deactivated my first card right after she left, and surprise, surprise, she used my info to pay. Except when she tried to pay for her and her friends this time, it was declined and it pinged that my ID was used. Campus security was called and she was escorted back to our dorm. Pretty much perfect time for our meeting with the campus living. She was scared shitless when they came to the dorm to talk and look through her stuff. On her phone, still logged into the app, was my ID information and name, and in her dorm closet was a half-full bottle of cheap vodka. And on my phone was a screenshot of said unauthorized vodka purchase. In the end, she was forced to pay me back all the funds she used in cash, reported for underage drinking, which automatically suspends you from campus living for at least a year, and would have on her record that she performed identity theft, which I also could have charged her for out of school. In the end, I got to have my own dorm for the remainder of that semester and even part of the semester after. Because it wasn't put as an available room for new dormers, I did get all of my money back from her parents, who were so embarrassed and apologized profusely. And when she did eventually come back to campus, no one wanted to dorm with her because she knew she had stolen her roommate's ID. I think in the end she rented off campus. Threatening me on a dating app? Watch while your life crumbles around you. The backstory. When I was 19 or 20, I'm 25 now, I met a guy on Tinder. Let's call him Brett. Brett and I didn't get off to a great start, but I had no idea how bad it was going to get. At first it just seemed we were incompatible, as he was pushy and rude and I take no shit. If it had stopped there, I wouldn't be here right now, but it didn't stop there. Once I made it clear that I found Brad repulsive and wanted nothing to do with him, his messages took a turn. He threatened to stalk, rape, kidnap, and murder me, along with some gory details about gouging out my eyes and defiling my corpse. Particularly disturbing was his explicit desire to strangle me and watch the life leave my eyes. He also managed to find my home address 3 hours away from the city we were in and threatened to come find me. As a side note, it was my dad's house and some small part of me wanted to see exactly how badly it would turn out for him if he showed up there. Of course, I warned my dad and gave him a picture of the guy. I also took screenshots of everything he sent me. The petty. Being a young woman with no idea whether this madman would actually go to lengths to find me, I called the cops. When they came, they looked at the messages, told me it constituted terrorist threats, but also told me there wasn't much they could do unless Brad actually showed up. They did take down his details, including where he worked, which is listed in his bio. This will be important later. From what I understand, the cops went to Brad's workplace to speak to him, and he refused, so they left. Nothing ever came of it. For the second part of the petty, I found his Facebook. Again, don't put your freaking workplace on all of your social media. I snooped around and managed to find a couple of his family members. I sent them all the screenshots along with an explanation of what happened. I didn't hear back for a few days, but when I did, it was from Brad's mom. She apologized profusely on behalf of her son and told me they were driving in from Brad's hometown 3 states away to confront him. She asked me not to warn him of this in advance, and obviously I agreed. I don't know what became of this, but I hope he got a good Solvent-style ass whooping. Now for the pro. A few years later, when Brad probably thought he was in the clear, something jogged my memory of what he did, and I decided it was time for him to face some actual consequences. I made a Facebook post including his picture and bio, all of the screenshots, and a message warning people in our area and asking them to share it around so other women would know what they were dealing with. 2 days later, Facebook took it down, but the damage had already been done. 3,000 shares and many messages later, all of that information had made its way to his company's Facebook page. From what I understand, they were absolutely flooded with messages about Brad and his behavior. They responded with a stock message about how they were dealing with it according to their policies. This was disheartening as I assumed they were just going to blow it off. By this point, Brad had been working for them for at least 4 years. However, I soon learned this was not the case. Several women from his company messaged me to thank me for coming forward and exposing the kind of person they were working with. It was through one of these women that I found out what happened to good old Brad. He was called into a meeting with his boss, HR, and the CEO of the company. As a side note, this is a multinational company and the CEO is a woman. They did not take the situation lightly. Within 2 days of posting on Facebook, Brad had been fired and escorted off the premises by armed security. In the end, Brad got what he deserved, and now he has a massive blank spot on his resume, as this company was his first job out of college and he can no longer get a letter of recommendation from them. As far as what became of him, I don't know. I never heard from him again, though I did get a message from his grandma telling me that what I was doing is illegal. Lol. Redneck thinks it's funny to yank out mailboxes. My dad makes him pay. So way back in the day, mid-90s or so, my family lived in a log cabin on 10 acres of land in rural area 10 minutes or so out of town. It wasn't totally the sticks, but you could definitely hear banjo music in the background sometimes. At the end of our nearly quarter-mile long driveway was one of those roads that was also technically a state highway. In the AM, I trudged down to wait for the bus. When I got home, I grabbed the mail and carried it back. Until one Monday morning when I went out and noticed the mailbox was gone. On close inspection, looks like it had just been ripped out of the ground. Dad was obviously not pleased. He went to talk with the county sheriff who happened to live a mile down the road. Turns out it had been happening up and down the roads for months. Someone was tossing a chain over mailboxes and yanking them out with their vehicle. He suspected a guy down the road with his great big lifted 4-wheel drive truck, but couldn't prove anything. Usually it happens on Saturday and Sunday nights, with people finding out in the morning. Also seems the nicer the mailbox, the bigger a target, and many had been hit multiple times. People had tried digging deeper, using more durable wood, etc. The guy just took it as a challenge and ripped them out again. Soft, sandy ground, and his truck was a monster. Well, Dad said challenge fucking accepted. A bit about my father. He's a steelworker with an engineering background and a graduate degree, built like a bear with 4 arms the size of my freaking legs. Most people looking at him would never think this monster of a man is also brilliant, but he is. The calm, cool type that almost never loses his temper. But wrong him and God help you. So Dad goes to Lowe's and buys the fanciest, prettiest mailbox they sell. He then proceeds to install it on top of an 8-foot long cylinder of 3 diameter hardened tool steel. But he wasn't done there. After digging down with post holes and dropping it in, he then filled it in with quick-set concrete. To really sell it, he then used some stripped off half-inch wood to cover the steel core of his now indestructible mailbox of doom. Primed and painted them so it looks like a standard 4-foot post, and even had my mom decorated it with flowers and such. He wanted it to be as tempting of a target as possible. Didn't even take a week. I went out for school in the morning and found the mailbox right where it should be. Attached to it was 30 feet of chain and an entire hitch assembly. Ripped right off the truck's frame, sheared the bolts. It was marvelous to behold. Sheriff gets called over, dies laughing when he sees it. He went to the house of the guy that was suspected and sure enough verified the damage to his truck matched. Fun fact, fucking with a mailbox is a federal crime, as in you go to federal prison, not those cushy state places. Dad was unofficially rewarded by the sheriff department with a few cases of beer and some venison, and after that every deputy in town would flash him a thumbs up whenever they saw it. So those were the stories for today's video. If you enjoyed this and want to watch more videos, then click here for more stories, or go check out the info cards in the right corner for more videos.